The 1995 crossover, Age of Apocalypse, is considered to be one of the standout storylines featuring the X-Men. Marvel will usually label it as an epic or a fan favorite. It seems to be one a lot of people remember fondly, even after all these years. I think in terms of the character Apocalypse, it's the story that put him on the map, the one he is most closely associated with, and the one a lot of his other appearances in media have drawn from, one way or another. Age of Apocalypse has been a story I've wanted to talk about for quite a while now. I just didn't really know how I was going to do it. Anyone out there who has read it knows that it's a behemoth, spanning several X-Men titles that were running at the same time, all coming out over the span of a few months. There are a lot of moving parts to this story that overlap in many areas. I will try my very best to summarize the events of it, trimming as much of the fat as I possibly can. The events depicted in Age of Apocalypse were set in motion by another shorter storyline that ran from the end of 1994 until early 1995, called Legion Quest. In it, the X-Men faced off against the mutant David Haller, known as Legion, son of Professor Charles Xavier, and a woman by the name of Gabrielle Haller, whom Charles had awoken from a coma using his telepathic abilities, and had fallen in love with while he was in Israel many years ago. Legion suffers from acute schizophrenia, and each of his personalities has a different psionic ability associated with them. During the events of Legion Quest, all of the parts of David's mind become whole, and he goes renegade, becoming a Super Saiyan of psychic, so to speak. Legion becomes so powerful that he unlocks a new ability, that being time travel, and causes a tear in the fabric of reality. In order to gain the respect of his father, David goes back in time to kill Xavier's close friend Magnus and prevent him from later becoming Magneto and getting in the way of what his father always tried to accomplish, peace between humans and mutants. Before Legion was able to finish off Magnus with a psionic attack, his father would throw himself in front of it, sacrificing his own life to save his friends. In doing so, he set off a chain reaction through time, completely erasing Legion as well as the X-Men, that is their current form, from existence. In the present, the powerful Macran crystal, the nexus of all realities, closely associated with the Shi'ar Empire, breaks apart and forms what is referred to as a crystallization wave, which passes through everything in the universe and eventually reaches the Earth. All of its inhabitants are frozen in place by it before the entire planet shatters. Legion Quest is a relatively decent little storyline, with its strongest moments being those involving the early days of Professor X and Magneto's close relationship, that and the final farewell given to the X-Men from their teacher and in many ways surrogate father before their untimely demise, who bonded them all together like a tight-woven family. It's very reminiscent of the episode One Man's Worth from the highly acclaimed X-Men animated series from the 1990s. There is a weird part in the Legion Quest storyline that has Legion pose as his father in the past and seduce his mother, making out with her and stuff, which is really fucked up, having suggested incest in a Marvel comic, but hey, nothing's perfect, right? Anywho, moving on to the Age of Apocalypse event, when the X-Men were forcefully sent back in time with Legion and he unintentionally killed his father, Charles Xavier, this had a massive impact on the timeline moving forward. It also changed the course of Eric Lensher's life. Xavier had spoken of harmony between humans and mutants, and Magnus believed that Charles had entrusted him with this dream with his dying breath. Magnus made a promise that he would make his late friend's dream a reality, no matter what the cost. This, of course, is a complete reversal of the motivations Magneto typically has in X-Men stories. He is usually fighting for mutant rights alone, and the notion that Homo superior should rule over the genetically inferior Homo sapien. In Age of Apocalypse, Magneto mentions that he had once thought that way, out of stubbornness and arrogance, but due to the death of Charles and a harsh reality check showing him the cruelty and evil a mutant rule would really bring, he had a change of heart. Because a world without Charles Xavier allowed the powerful mutant known as Apocalypse to conquer half of the planet in this new timeline, acting as its genetic overlord. The lives of both mutants and humans become hell on Earth. Apocalypse would ignite a genetic civil war, turning factions of humans and mutants against each other to purge the entire planet of weakness so that only the strongest would survive and those worthy of evolution would become his soldiers. Among his top warriors include the Elite Mutant Force, or EMF for short, whose primary members include the brothers Scott and Nathan Summers, known by their codenames Cyclops and Havoc. Apocalypse also has 4 horsemen that act as caretakers of a quarter of his domain. They include Mr. Sinister, Abyss, Mikhail, and Holocaust. Holocaust is a character I have spoken about before on the channel. If you would like more info on who he is and his backstory, then check out the breakdown I did on him. But in this story, he is sent by Apocalypse to perform cullings, a selective slaughter of the human population, with any survivors being used for raw genetic material in the creation of Apocalypse's mutant hybrid army known as Infinites. Dark Beast, whose appearance and mutation had been radicalized through unorthodox experiments done to himself, is the mastermind behind Apocalypse's Infinites. Throughout the storyline, he can be seen performing twisted experiments on humans and mutants, and is quite obviously a sadist, getting sick pleasure out of the pain he inflicts on others. Apocalypse's citadel is located in the heart of Manhattan. He has labeled all rebel mutants who have turned against him as race traitors, terrorists, and heretics. His throne is surrounded by hundreds of thousands of scorched remains, and when asked about them, he says that he loves the aroma they emit. Apocalypse and his forces are opposed by several groups of resistance fighters, the largest being the Human High Council, situated in Europe. They have their big guns pointed at the United States, where Apocalypse has built his citadel, and the entire planet is on the brink of a world war. The council is being led by Bolivar Trask and his wife Moira Trask, formerly Moira McTaggart. Sentinels have been used by the Council to shuttle human survivors and to fight back the mutants, those allied with Apocalypse, and any caught in the crossfire. The X-Men do exist within this new timeline, but rather than be led by Charles Xavier, they are now led by Magneto. The X-Men are extremely loyal and devout to their commander, and will follow him to the ends of the earth if necessary. Magneto has married fellow X-Men Rogue, and the two had a son named Charles. In case you were wondering, this sexy time is made possible due to Eric creating a biomagnetic shield around his body. Betcha Gambit wishes he could do that, huh? I don't know how that would work during the process of ejaculation, but let's not dwell on something like that. Anyways, this brings me to Bishop, one of the X-Men who had traveled back to the past to fight Legion. He had not been erased from the timeline like the rest of the X-Men were, because his life and existence was not the result of Charles Xavier. Bishop's memories of the event that cost Xavier his life all those years ago are a bit hazy, and he feels that Magneto was somehow responsible and attempts to kill him. When Rogue defends her husband from this unknown man, she absorbs some of his memories, just as Bishop's powers of energy absorption and redirection activate, causing a backlash and allowing Magneto to view images of another life, another reality, where Charles Xavier had been alive and well. Magneto is so determined in making the world a better place, the way his friend had wanted, that he is willing to undo his own timeline in order for Charles to survive. Magneto breaks his X-Men up into several smaller teams to accomplish a variety of missions. Some simply take the fight to Apocalypse, while others are meant to set events in motion that will change the course of history and in turn undo their timeline altogether. Rogue leads the astonishing X-Men, consisting of Sabretooth, Blink, Sunfire, Morph, and Wildchild. They are sent to stop the human genocide being committed by Apocalypse's first horseman, Holocaust. During this sequence of the story, Shiro Yoshida, Sunfire, loses control of his powers, having been previously experimented on by Apocalypse's forces, which caused his entire body to now be engulfed in searing flame. Rogue is forced to power him down by absorbing some of his energy. This causes her to view his past memories, specifically the death of his family and friends when Holocaust had attacked and destroyed Japan. Holocaust would seemingly kill Sabretooth, and Blink would confront him to avenge his death. Sabretooth had of course saved her when she was a small child, freeing her from prison. Blink would be unsuccessful in killing Holocaust, even with the aid of Rogue, and he would escape to Apocalypse's citadel via teleporter. Magneto sends Nightcrawler and his team, Excalibur, consisting of Mystique and Switchback, to the mutant refuge in Antarctica, known as Avalon. Their goal is to locate Destiny, so she can use her mutant powers of clairvoyance to further validate the claims made by Bishop. Gambit and his team, the Externals, consisting of Jubilee, Sunspot, Strong Guy, and Lila Cheney, are sent to the other side of the universe to retrieve a fragment of the McCran crystal. It is vital in Destiny being able to verify Bishop's memories. The Externals would face off with the Shi'ar Empire's Imperial Guard, and even ally with Blackbird and the Starjammers. Strong Guy would end up betraying his team, stealing the fragment of the McCran crystal, as well as Magneto's son Charles when they returned to Earth, but only because Apocalypse's Infinites had captured Strong Guy and planted a bomb in his head. He had no choice in the matter. Colossus and his wife Shadowcat lead Generation Next, a team of mutant students, Chamber, Skin, Mondo, and Husk, who are sent to the slave pit known as the Seattle Core, Apocalypse's energy source for America. It's here where they must rescue Colossus's younger sister, Illyana, who is the last surviving trans-dimensional teleporter. The heroes battle with the Sugar Man, who I have stated in the past is one of the weirdest looking Marvel characters out there. He's just fucking gross to look at. Following the battle, the members of Generation Next are left for dead by Colossus, who puts the life of his sister above the life of his team. The last of the X-Men groups is the Amazing X-Men, led by Magneto's son, Quicksilver. Other members of the team include Storm, Iceman, Exodus, Dazzler, and Banshee. Their mission is to help the evacuation of humans in Europe due to the threat of war. They battle with another of Apocalypse's horsemen named Abyss, who feeds off the fear of his enemies and whose body houses a strange portal to another dimension. Magneto isn't the only one sending mutants on high-stake missions against Apocalypse and his forces, though. The Human High Council sends their own team, consisting of Wolverine and Jean Grey, to attack Apocalypse's Great Atlantic Seawall to destroy its control center. This allows hundreds of Sentinels to arrive so thousands of human refugees can be rescued on the eastern coast of the United States. While all of these battles on various fronts are taking place, there is dissension among Apocalypse's ranks. One of his most trusted horsemen, Mr. Sinister, who had been in charge of the breeding pens, which, as their name suggests, was a prison designed for the sole purpose of breeding stronger mutants, has been feeding secret information to the human High Council behind his master's back. Sinister does this because he wants to engineer the evolution of mutants his way, following his own twisted design. The war Apocalypse is igniting threatens everything he has worked so hard to achieve, threatens the lives of his current creations, as well as all of the potential ones. Sinister's treachery is discovered by Cyclops, who, by the way, in this timeline, is a literal Cyclops, only having one eye, the other being clawed out by Wolverine during a fight they had had in the breeding pens. Wolverine also had one of his hands shot off in that same battle, FYI. Anyways, Cyclops goes to investigate Sinister, but his laboratory had been destroyed to get rid of all evidence against him. Sinister is also nowhere to be found. Scott's brother Havoc would eventually turn on him, learning that Cyclops had been secretly helping prisoners escape, finally realizing the evil of Apocalypse's ways. Havoc wants to outrank Cyclops and grow closer with his master Apocalypse. The two brothers would come to blows, being forced to fight hand to hand because their mutant abilities cancel each other out. Cyclops would defeat Havoc, and he and Jean Grey would liberate the breeding pens by taking out the Brain Trust, a group of disembodied brains of psychic mutants that are programmed to use their psionic powers to sedate the prisoners. The freed mutants would soon rebel, and Apocalypse's empire would start to crumble. The final moments of this storyline have Apocalypse attack the headquarters of the X-Men, the run-down former mansion of Charles Xavier, with his army of Infinites. He defeats Magneto and takes the Master of Magnetism, as well as his infant son Charles, prisoner at his citadel. Bishop was also present at the mansion and is taken to the Church of the Magi to have his mind probed by the Shadow King, and then later Abyss. Apocalypse's followers want Bishop's mind cleansed of all traitorous memories that depict a world without their master in charge. Quicksilver and his team would end up saving Bishop, with Banshee sacrificing himself to kill the vile Abyss. When all of the remaining X-Men factions return and combine themselves together, they lead an all-out assault on Apocalypse's citadel, to not only rescue their leader, Magneto, but also to obtain the McCran crystal fragment that was stolen, so they can use its regenerating properties to hopefully repair time. When they do locate it, Destiny is able to view this alternate timeline Bishop had been speaking about, and knows it to be true. Magneto would be released from his restraints, and uses his mutant powers to create a large metal exoskeleton for himself, which he uses to attack Apocalypse with, culminating with Magneto ripping the villain's body in half. Brutal. Colossus's sister Illyana uses her trans-dimensional powers in combination with the McCran crystal fragment to send Bishop back in time to the moment Legion inadvertently killed his father. Bishop would plunge Legion's psionic dagger into his own heart, causing a constant loop of unstable psionic energy that kills them both. In the alternate future, Magneto and his wife Rogue watch on as the global conflict between Apocalypse's army and the human High Council erupts into nuclear war and eradicates everything in sight. It is seemingly the end of a possible future, one that has thankfully been averted. Age of Apocalypse is a classic. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's the best X-Men story ever written, because it is unnecessarily long and meanders quite a bit with some useless filler. Revisiting it has only reinforced those beliefs I have towards it. but it can still definitely be described as epic because many of its most iconic moments and sequences still hit hard, even to this day. Apocalypse is depicted as a ruthless dictator in this alternate reality. They really beef him up as this ultra-villain who has created the most violent, twisted, and depressing existence imaginable for the inhabitants of Earth, both human and mutant alike. His horsemen, particularly Holocaust and Abyss, are some of the most despicable and irredeemable antagonists you'll ever read about in a Marvel comic. Holocaust more so. He's pure unadulterated evil, nasty and unforgiving to the core. He gives zero shits about the pain he inflicts, both mental and physical. I love how the very existence of this story centers around the importance of the life of Charles Xavier, how vital it is to the entire X-Men narrative. Without Professor X, there really isn't an X-Men. He is the missing piece of this giant jigsaw puzzle, even after dying, with Magneto being the one to create his version of the X-Men in this alternate timeline. It's Charles Xavier's ideology that fuels them. It's the oil that keeps the whole machine running smoothly. We get to see all of these iconic X-Men characters get reimagined in this new timeline. Wolverine and Jean Grey are a couple, though they do grow apart as the story progresses, and the seeds of a romance between her and Cyclops then get planted. Too bad the world essentially blows up, so it's kind of bittersweet. Scott Summers is unrecognizable at the beginning of the story, allying himself with Apocalypse, but he is a born hero and leader, and those characteristics shine through by the end, something that seems to come natural for him regardless of the reality he finds himself in. And then, once again, there is Magneto, who in this story is given very different motivations than we are used to, wanting to create harmony between humans and mutants, rather than fracture it like usual. He is portrayed as this respected leader of the X-Men, but you do get a sense that his powers have weakened over time. Apocalypse even mentions this during their encounter at the mansion. Having given up his old ways, Magneto may have lost a bit of his edge, his ruthlessness he once had. Of course, all it takes is a little resolve. Case in point, Magneto ripping Apocalypse in half with his powers. But I do think it's an interesting discussion this comic provides. If Magneto had different motivations, what would that do to his abilities? Could that change his effectiveness in battle? All in all, I do really enjoy Age of Apocalypse. I consider it to be one of the more epic X-Men storylines out there, despite its unnecessarily massive size. I think a lot of newcomers to comics would probably be intimidated by the thought of reading it. Like I had mentioned at the start, there are a lot of moving parts to this story, and so many things overlap and connect with each other, but I do believe it deserves to be explored, or if you have read it, just not for a long time, revisited, because there's a lot of great stuff here. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you would like to support the channel, you can do so by subscribing, hitting that bell icon to be notified of all future content I release, and even become a producer for my videos over on patreon.com if you can. I will see you all in the next one. Take care and stay nerdy.